I was stirring oatmeal when my house appeared on a real estate app, vacant, quick close, motivated seller, with photos taken through my living room window. The listing agent's name was printed in bold beneath the description. It was my daughter-in-law. Before we dive deeper, don't forget to subscribe and drop a comment letting us know where you're tuning in from. My name is Leonard, but everyone who is not angry with me calls me Len. I am 69 years old, a grandfather twice over, and the owner of a weathered cedar home at the edge of a salt marsh on the Massachusetts coast. The deck leans a little, the shingles need paint more often than I admit. My late wife, Nora, planted hydrangeas that bloom like blue fireworks every June, and when the tide pulls back, egrets step through the reeds as if they own the place. It is not a mansion. It is a stubborn, honest house. Mine. The listing hit my phone at 7:18 a.m. I know the exact time because I dropped the spoon and watched it disappear into the oatmeal with a soft, ridiculous plop. There were 12 photos. My curtains. My grandfather clock. My granddaughter's drawing on the fridge. The words, vacant, quick close, pinched something behind my ribs that felt like a hand turning. The agent, Paige Whitcomb. My son Ethan's wife. She had staged open houses for half the town, always with a hard smile like a lock that had forgotten how to open. She once told me the trick to selling anything is to make people picture themselves inside of it, living better, thinner, richer. She had a talent for making you feel like a guest in your own life. Vacant, I said to the empty kitchen. I reached for the wall for balance, fingers skimming the spot where Nora taped our water bill for years because she said a refrigerator door was for art, not debts. When I called Ethan, he did not pick up. 3 rings and a cheerful recorded voice told me to leave a message and make it quick. I stood by the sink, listening to a gull complain outside the window, and I felt a calm rise that I recognized from the worst storms at sea. It is the kind of calm you grab when you realize there is no one steering but you. I called again. He answered on the 4th try, breathless and annoyed. Dad, I am in the middle of. Why is my house on the market? I asked, and why is your wife the one listing it? Silence. Then a sigh that tried to be patient, like a doctor explaining homework to a child. You remember the plan. What plan is that? The one Paige told you about at Sunday dinner, he said, and I could hear him moving through a room, the rustle of fabric, a drawer sliding. The equity program, to help you qualify for care if you ever need it. We went over it. You signed a thing so it could be, handled. I had a memory of a Sunday with too much pot roast and not enough oxygen. Paige's cousin at the table. A man in a navy blazer who called himself a senior specialist and laughed too loud at nothing. A fat stack of standard forms set beside the salad like another dish to pass. I did not sign anything that lets you sell my home, I said. Ethan lowered his voice. Dad, do not do this. You have been alone since Mom died, you forget things. You told us it would be easier to. I told you it would be easier to ask for help, I said, and my own voice surprised me with its steadiness. I never said you could sell the last thing she and I built together while I was still inside it. He was quiet for a beat too long. Then he hung up. I wish I could say I slammed the phone or swore or punched a wall. I did none of those things. I put on Nora's old green cardigan because the kitchen had turned cold. Then I made a list in the same careful block letters I learned in the army when I was too young to think about how old this day would make me feel. Call county. Find out what they filed. Do not panic. The county clerk put me on hold long enough for the oatmeal to set into grout. When she came back, she spoke gently, like I had already been knocked down. "Mr. Hawthorne, there is a transfer recorded last month. It is a friendly conveyance into a private entity. The managers are listed as Ethan Hawthorne and Paige Whitcomb." My lungs forgot how to breathe for a moment. "And me? You are described as a life occupant. It says you can stay until you pass, at which point the property belongs to the entity." "I never agreed to that," I said. "There is a notarized document," she said, and this time her voice turned clinical. "The file says you appeared with identification. There is a stamp and signature." I do not know if it was the word notarized or the way she said stamp that pulled a memory up from the cold deep. A Sunday too bright with cheap candles and that cousin again, pushing papers across my dining table with a little smile that said he had practiced it in the mirror. My reading glasses were in the other room. I remember saying I would get them, and I remember Paige's hand on my sleeve, her fingers light and firm. "No worries, Len, it is just the standard declaration so the tax office stops sending you those letters." Her cousin slid a page toward me and moved his hand like a dealer covering his cards. "I will witness," he said. "Easier for everyone. If you are wondering how a man who built boats for 30 years could be that stupid, so am I. I do not need you to tell me I failed at something basic. But there is a particular kind of fog that settles when you are grieving and grateful to be included at any table, even one where you are the meal." I thanked the clerk, hung up, and sat back down at the table where I had apparently given them a legal trail to my front door. The hydrangeas pressed their blue faces against the window. I had a dull, childish urge to go outside and apologize to the plants for not protecting them better. At 10 past noon, my granddaughter Molly arrived with 2 paper bags that smelled like oranges and cinnamon. "Grandpa," she called from the mudroom, "I brought scones from Mrs. Patel's." She is 16 and loud in the best possible way. She kept talking as she came down the hall. "Dad says you were confused on the phone, so I told him to let me come check on you, because..." She stopped when she saw my face. "What is going on?" she asked. She put the bags down and put both hands on my cheeks like she used to do when she was 5 and wanted to make sure I was looking her in the eyes. I showed her the listing. Her mouth opened and closed twice without sound. Then she took a breath through her nose, slow and steady, the way Nora taught her when she had a temper like a lit match. "Did you sign anything?" "I signed paper I did not read," I said. "Do not make my mistake smaller than it is." She did not. She nodded once, like a soldier getting new orders. Then she pulled out her phone and started typing with the speed only young people have. "Paige's cousin is not a notary anymore," she said after a minute. "His commission expired last year. He never renewed. He posted about taking some break to pursue entrepreneurial ventures and then half the comments are spam." I felt a warmth climb my chest like a lamp being turned on. "Are you sure?" She grinned, fierce and proud. "I am my grandmother's favorite for a reason." By 2 o'clock, we had a plan that fit on the back of a grocery receipt between a list of peppers and a reminder to buy batteries. It was not legal strategy so much as common sense with a spine. We would go to the clerk's office when it opened in the morning. We would ask for the recorded pages. We would swear what we needed to swear. We would bring proof of the cousin's expired commission if anyone cared to listen. And tonight, we would go to the open house. Because yes, there was an open house. That was the part that made my hands shake, the idea of strangers walking through the rooms where I had kissed Nora and said prayers with a little girl who had trouble sleeping when it thundered. At 5:32 p.m. we parked 3 houses down and watched people step through my front door with little pamphlets and big eyes. Paige stood at the entryway in a navy dress that made her look like the hostess at a very expensive restaurant. She had replaced my doormat with one that said "Welcome Home." Something mean in me wanted to flip it over and write "Not yours" on the back. "Ready," Molly said, her hand around my arm like I might run. "Not remotely," I said. "Let us go." The smell of lemon cleaner hit me first. The hydrangeas were cut and stuffed into a glass vase on the coffee table. There was jazz playing, the polished kind that makes every room feel like it is for other people with better shoes. A couple in their 30s wandered past the bookcase where Nora's favorite novels had lived. There were gaps where she used to keep them, obvious as missing teeth. "Len," Paige said brightly, her smile so wide it hurt to look at. "Sweetheart, you made it. I told Ethan you would struggle with all the logistics, so we thought we would just make this smooth." "Vacant," I said, and I watched her eyes flick to the sign-in sheet as if it could tell her what was going to happen next. "We need to," she began. But Molly stepped forward. "Hi, Paige," she said, and her voice was so polite that it took a second to understand the words. "We will be recording. Just so we capture all the clarity you are offering." Paige's smile stayed fixed, but it was the kind of fix you do with tape when a chair is breaking. "There is no need for drama." "There is a need for truth," I said. "You filed something against my house using a stamp that expired. You told me it was for taxes. Now strangers are walking through my kitchen while my coffee is still warm." A man near the fireplace stopped pretending he was not listening. A woman by the stairs lowered her pamphlet. Paige's voice dropped an inch. "Len, you agreed to let us manage this for your care. We are protecting you. By making me vacant," I said. "Tell me, when exactly did you decide that the day I stopped being useful was the day you would take the roof Nora and I built?" Her nostrils flared. "You are being unfair." Molly lifted her phone a little higher. "We checked the notary registry," she said. "Your cousin's commission expired last August. He stamped the papers in September. That is what you call a problem." Paige's eyes cut to the hallway. A moment later, Ethan appeared like he had been waiting for a cue. He looked tired. He looked older than his 38 years. For a flash of a second, I saw the boy who cried when his goldfish died and would not let us flush it for 3 days because he thought grief needed time. "Dad," he said, and there was real fear in his voice. "Can we talk in the kitchen?" "Anything you have to say," I said, "you can say right here. In front of the nice people picturing their Thanksgiving dinner at a table that does not belong to them." A young couple laughed softly, guilty and relieved that this spectacle was not theirs. Ethan rubbed his forehead. "Look, this is about securing things for later. Taxes. Planning. We did not want to bother you with choice," I said. "I know." He looked past me to Molly. "Put the phone down." "No," she said. "There is a point in a confrontation where the air changes. It is not a big thing. It is subtle, like a curtain swaying when someone opens a window." That was the moment. Ethan realized I would not be moved by being told I was fragile. Paige realized her smile had run out of power. The strangers realized their show had turned into a lesson. And I realized I was not alone. I turned to the room. "The open house is cancelled," I said. "If you want to see the marsh at low tide, come back next year. The house will still be here. With me." A few people clapped, because humans are awkward and kind in equal measure. Paige hissed, "You have no idea what you are doing." "I am fairly certain I do," I said. I am taking back my life, and I am giving the rest to people who love more than they count. That night, after the crowd thinned and Paige left in a rush of perfume and anger, Ethan stayed. He stood on the deck and stared at the marsh like it might tell him what he had lost. I thought I was helping, he said. His voice was small. I thought if we controlled the mess, it would not drown us later. I begged you to ask me first, I said. You did not. He nodded, and he cried, the quiet, ashamed kind of crying that makes you want to fix everything for your child, and also reminds you that sometimes they must feel the bruise to learn how to stop bumping the same furniture. In the morning, Molly and I walked into the clerk's office with copies from the notary registry that showed the cousin's stamp had gone dry months before he pressed it on my life. We gave statements. We did not use any heroic words. We said what happened. The clerk listened the way a person does when she has heard 100 different versions of the same story and still cares to hear yours. An affidavit was filed. The friendly conveyance began to look less friendly to the people who had called it that. The title company withdrew. The listing vanished from the app like a bad memory that finally knows the door. I did not sue anyone that day. I did something quieter. I met with a gentle woman with soft hands who said she helps grandfathers put their promises in ink. She asked me who I trusted. I did not say Ethan. I will not lie to you. He will have to earn his way back to that answer. I said Molly. I said my sister, Teresa, who lives one town over and has always arrived when the storm is already inside the house. I said my little grandson Jamie, who is 9 and still believes that I invented the moon landing because I once told him a story about holding the ladder for the men who went up. We drew something simple that even my foggy, grieving brain could follow. The house stays mine while I live. When I do not, the marsh and the hydrangeas and the creaky deck will belong to the people who showed up with scones and courage, who did not trade love for a shortcut. When I came home, the lemon cleaner had faded, the jazz had quieted in my memory, and the kitchen smelled like oranges because Molly had set them in a bowl and said, "We should keep these. They are cheerful." Ethan came by at dusk. He did not ring the bell. He stood on the porch with his hands in his pockets, looking like a boy again, and asked if he could sit. We watched the egrets hunt until the light dropped and the marsh turned silver. "I will make it right," he said. "You cannot give back what you took," I said, and my voice did not tremble. "But you can stop taking." He nodded. "I can do that." A week later, I found a note from Paige in my mailbox that was not so much an apology as a list of reasons she was not to blame. I tossed it in the drawer where I keep Nora's recipe cards. It felt fitting. Some things you save because they remind you who you will not be. I wish someone had told me sooner that the worst kind of theft is the kind that smiles and says it is for your own good. I wish I had looked closer at the words beneath the smile. I wish I had remembered that the person who loves you does not need to trick you into anything. The hydrangeas are in bloom now, another summer turning the marsh into a breathing, living painting. Molly comes by on Saturdays and reads me lines from the book Nora loved best. Jamie insists on fishing off the dock with a stick and a piece of string, and I pretend to be shocked every time he catches the same leaf. I am not vacant. I am home. And when it is time for this house to hold someone else's life, it will be because I said so, with a clear head and a full heart. It will be Molly's children who press their faces to these windows. It will be Jamie's laughter on this deck. It will be worthy hands watering the blue blossoms. Everything that matters will stay where it belongs.
Hello everyone, and thank you for watching. I truly hope you enjoyed listening to the story as much as I enjoyed creating it. If you did, Please consider liking the video and subscribing to the channel to help support the creation of more stories like this. Have a great